The salvage ship Nightshade drifted silently through the debris field, its running lights dimmed to avoid detection. Naira Blackwood stood at the viewport, her dark eyes scanning the wreckage of what had once been a research vessel. Something about this job felt wrong, but salvage pilots couldn't afford to be picky these days. Leto, run another scan for life signs, she commanded, brushing a strand of silver-streaked black hair from her face. The ship's AI responded with its usual calm efficiency. No conventional life signs detected, Captain. However, there appears to be an anomalous energy signature in the vessel's medical bay. Naira frowned, tapping her fingers against the worn leather of her jacket. Anomalous how? The pattern suggests organic activity, but it's unlike anything in my database. That should have been enough warning to turn back. The smart move would be to log the coordinates and sell them to a bigger salvage outfit, but Naira hadn't survived 15 years in deep space by playing it safe. Mark the coordinates, I'm going ins. The Nightshade eased alongside the derelict vessel, matching its slow spin. Naira checked her environment suit seals one final time before stepping into the airlock. The familiar hiss of pressurization calmed her nerves as she waited for the green light. The derelict's hull bore the name *Helios Initiative in faded letters. No registration numbers, no corporate logos, another red flag. The breach point was a jagged tear in the cargo bay, likely from a micrometeorite impact. Naira activated her suit's magnetic boots and carefully made her way inside. Emergency lights cast an eerie red glow through the corridors. Unlike most abandoned ships, there were no signs of panic or evacuation. No scattered personal effects, no hastily sealed doors, just empty halls and an unsettling silence. Leto, you reading mace. Signal clear, Captain. Medical bay is 2 levels up, Section C. Naira moved carefully through the ship, her handheld scanner sweeping for valuable salvage. The ship's technology was advanced, possibly military-grade, but stripped of anything identifying. Someone had gone to great lengths to keep this vessel's purpose secret. The medical bay doors were sealed but still had power. Naira bypassed the security with practiced ease, only to freeze as the doors slid open. The room was filled with stasis pods, most of them damaged or empty, but one still hummed with power, its surface frosted over. Her scanner went wild as she approached. The pod's display flickered with corrupted data, but she could make out vital signs, impossible vital signs for someone in stasis this long. Leto, I've got something. Prep the cargo bay for emergency medical. Captain, regulation states. Override protocols, authorization Blackwood 7 Delta. The pod's controls responded to her touch, beginning its revival sequence. As the frost cleared, Naira found herself staring at a young man with striking features. Olive skin, close-cropped dark hair, and most remarkably, faint luminescent patterns tracing his skin like circuits. His eyes snapped open suddenly, eyes that shifted color like oil on water, and Naira stumbled back as every piece of powered equipment in the room sparked and died. The man gasped, struggling against the pod's restraints. Who, where? Easy, Naira said, raising her hands. I'm Naira Blackwood, salvage pilot, you're safe. He focused on her, his breathing steadying. Raven, my name is Raven D'Souza. They were trying to. Save your strength, can you walk? Raven nodded weakly. Naira helped him from the pod, supporting his weight as they made their slow way back to the Nightshade Asterisk. His skin was fever-hot even through her suit, and those strange patterns pulsed with his heartbeat. Once aboard, Naira settled him in the medical bay while Leto ran diagnostics. She couldn't shake the feeling that she'd just stepped into something much bigger than a simple salvage operation. Your vital signs are stabilizing, she told him, checking the readouts. Want to tell me what you were doing in that stasis pod? Raven's hands trembled slightly as he accepted a cup of water. I was an experiment. The Helios Initiative was developing ways to interface human consciousness with quantum systems. I volunteered, but I didn't know. His voice cracked and the lights in the medical bay flickered. Naira noticed the correlation but said nothing. They succeeded, he continued, too well. I could sense and manipulate energy fields, quantum states, but I couldn't control it. People got hurt, so they put me in stasis while they worked on a solution. That was, how long ago? Ship's logs are corrupted, Naira said, but based on the decay rate of the hull, at least 3 years. Raven closed his eyes, those strange patterns dimming. They abandoned me, left me floating in space because I was a failed experiment. Who's they? Quantum Horizons Corporation. They fund breakthrough research, but their real goal is weapons development, human weapons. Naira cursed under her breath. Quantum Horizons was not a corporation you wanted attention from. They had their own private military and a reputation for making problems disappear. "We need to move," she said, standing, "if they tagged that ship with a tracker." The proximity alarm blared, cutting her off. Leto's voice was urgent. "Captain, 3 vessels just dropped out of FTL, military configuration bearing our way." Raven tried to stand, swaying. "They found me. I'm sorry, I never meant to drag anyone else into this." Naira helped steady him, her mind racing through options. The Nightshade was fast and stealthy, but it couldn't outrun military ships, not directly. "Can you still do it?" she asked. "Manipulate energy fields." He nodded hesitantly. "But I can't control it. I might damage your ship." "Better that than what they'll do to us." She helped him to the bridge, settling him in the co-pilot seat. "Focus on their targeting systems. Give me a few blind spots to work with." The pursuing ships were closing fast, but Naira had one advantage. She knew these debris fields better than anyone. As Raven closed his eyes in concentration, she plotted a course through the densest part of the field. "Leto, divert power from life support to engines and shields. We're going to do something stupid." The first shots from the pursuing vessels went wide as their targeting systems wavered. Raven's patterns glowed brighter, sweat beading on his forehead as he fought to maintain the interference. Naira's hands flew over the controls, guiding the Asterisk Nightshade through gaps barely wider than the ship itself. Warning alerts screamed as debris scraped their shields, but she didn't slow down. "They're charging EMP weapons," Leto reported. "Raven, if you've got anything left." He gritted his teeth, and the patterns on his skin blazed like fire. The nearest pursuing ship suddenly went dark, its systems overloaded. It drifted into the path of the second ship, forcing it to break off pursuit. The third ship fired its EMP, but Naira was ready. She cut all power for 3 seconds, letting momentum carry them through a narrow gap between 2 massive hull fragments. When power restored, they were deep in the debris field, sensor shadows masking their position. "Lost contact with pursuing vessels," Leto announced after several tense minutes. Raven slumped in his seat, the patterns on his skin barely visible now. "That wasn't supposed to be possible. They said I couldn't focus the ability." "They lied about a lot of things, I'm guessing." Naira set a course for the outer rim where it would be easier to disappear. "Rest, we've got a long flight ahead of us." As Raven drifted into exhausted sleep, Naira watched the debris field recede behind them. She'd started this day looking for salvage and instead found herself harboring a fugitive with impossible abilities. But looking at the young man who'd been abandoned to die in space, she knew she couldn't have done anything else. The Nightshade carried them into deeper space, while behind them Quantum Horizons vessels began a systematic search pattern. This wasn't over, it was just beginning. The Osiris station hung like a tarnished jewel against the violet nebula, its spinning rings catching starlight. Naira guided the Nightshade toward a lesser-used docking port, away from the main traffic lanes. After 3 weeks of running dark and changing courses, they needed supplies and information. "Your contact is trustworthy?" Raven asked from the co-pilot's seat. The luminescent patterns on his skin had dimmed to nearly invisible, a trick he'd learned to avoid attention. "Jin's been moving cargo through the outer rim longer than I've been flying," Naira replied, initiating docking procedures. "She hates Quantum Horizons as much as anyone, just let me do the talking." The station's artificial gravity took hold as they docked. Naira had changed her ship's transponder codes twice since their escape, but she still felt exposed. Quantum Horizons had eyes everywhere. Jin's workshop was tucked away in the station's maintenance level, surrounded by salvaged ship parts and humming machinery. The owner herself was bent over a gutted navigation computer when they entered, her silver-streaked hair tied back with old power cables. "Naira Blackwood," Jin straightened up, wiping grease from her hands. "Heard some interesting rumors about you lately. Something about military ships getting their systems fried in the Calypso belt." "Mechanical failure," Naira said smoothly. "You know how those corporate types cut corners on maintenance." Jin's sharp eyes flickered to Raven, nodding his careful stillness. "And this would be my new engineer, Ravens." Interesting patterns under his skin, almost like quantum circuitry. Jin's voice was casual, but her hand drifted toward the tool bench where Naira knew she kept a pulse pistol. Raven tensed, and for a moment the workshop's lights wavered. Naira stepped forward quickly. Jin, we need information, and maybe some of those special parts you keep for friends. The older woman studied them both for a long moment, then sighed. You always did find the most interesting trouble, girl. She locked the workshop door and activated a signal scrambler. 3 days ago, Quantum Horizons posted a massive bounty. They're calling it a retrieval of stolen property. The description matches your friend there. I'm not their property, Raven said quietly. The tools on Jin's workbench vibrated slightly. Easy, Naira touched his arm. What else, Jin? They're hearing every mercenary crew in the sector, but that's not the worst part. Jin pulled up an encrypted data feed. Their research division is mobilizing. Whatever they did to him, they want to replicate it. There are reports of more test subjects. Raven's patterns flared briefly. There were others in the facility. I remember voices screaming sometimes. They said I was the only successful integration. And now they want to perfect the process, Naira growled. We need to shut them down. Jin barked a laugh. You and what army? Quantum Horizons has more private military than some planets. But they have weaknesses, Raven said. I saw inside their systems. The quantum integration process is unstable. They can't control it without a template. That's why they want me back. Which means we just need to stay ahead of them, Naira started to say, but Jin raised a hand for silence. The workshop's security system was blinking. Someone's asking about you at the docks, Jin said tersely. Armed military gear. She pulled open a hidden panel in the wall. Service tunnel goes to the lower hangars. I'll wipe the security feeds. Naira hesitated. Thank you. Just try not to get killed. You still owe me for that plasma injector. Jin pressed a data chip into her hand. Contact on New Damascus. She knows more about quantum integration than anyone outside the corporation. Name's Dr. Senna Rhodes. They were halfway through the service tunnel when the station's alert system activated. Naira led them through a maze of maintenance passages, relying on years of smuggling experience. Behind them, boots thundered on metal decking. They're hurting us, Raven said between breaths. I can sense their energy signatures converging. Then we'll give them something else to chase. Naira spotted a junction box and yanked it open. Can you overload it carefully? Raven placed his hand on the circuits. His patterns brightened as power surged through the station's grid. Lights exploded in cascading waves, plunging entire sections into darkness. Alarms blared as emergency systems kicked in. They reached the lower hangars in the confusion. But instead of returning to the Nightshade Asterisk, Naira led them to a battered cargo shuttle. Maintenance vehicle, she explained, bypassing the simple lock. They'll expect us to run for my ship. The shuttle's engines were cold when they lifted off, joining a stream of vessels fleeing the station's chaos. Naira kept their speed steady, matching the other traffic while Raven monitored pursuit. 3 ships breaking from the station, he reported. Military thrust patterns. They're heading for the Nightshade Asterisk. Naira allowed herself a small smile as they slipped away from the station. Let them chase it. Leto's running an autopilot program. She'll lead them on a nice tour of the local asteroid fields. You'll lose your ship. Ships can be replaced. The Nightshade has escape pods with rescue beacons. They'll find her eventually empty and clean. She punched in coordinates for a long FTL jump. We need to focus on finding this Dr. Rhodes. Raven was quiet for a moment, his patterns shifting like troubled thoughts. You gave up your ship for me, your life, your work. I chose to help you, Naira said firmly. Whatever Quantum Horizons is doing, it needs to be stopped. And you, she glanced at him, you deserve better than being their lab rat. The shuttle shuddered as the FTL drive engaged. Raven's patterns pulsed in sync with the engine's rhythm, and Naira noticed their power consumption dropping slightly. He was learning to control his abilities, to work with machines instead of overwhelming them. New Damascus is 3 jumps away, she said, checking their fuel levels. We'll need to change ships at least twice, maybe pick up some new identities. Jin's contact better be worth it. What if she can't help? Raven asked softly. What if there's no way to stabilize the integration? Then we keep running, Naira's voice was firm. But first, we find out exactly what Quantum Horizons is doing with their other test subjects. No one else should go through what you did. The shuttle carried them through FTL space, a tiny speck of light racing between the stars. Behind them, Quantum Horizons ships would be regrouping, analyzing data, planning their next move. But for now, Naira and Raven had breathing room. She watched him adjust their power flow almost unconsciously, his patterns dancing with starlight. Whatever Quantum Horizons had created in him, they couldn't control it. Maybe that was the point. Some things weren't meant to be controlled, only understood. The race to New Damascus would be dangerous. But as Raven's abilities grew stronger, more focused, Naira began to hope. Not just for survival, but for justice, for answers, for a future where people like Raven could exist without being weapons or experiments. First, though, they had to survive. And somewhere ahead, Dr. Senna Rhodes was waiting with secrets of her own. New Damascus was a world of eternal twilight, its sun perpetually eclipsed by a massive gas giant. The city of Haven clung to the twilight band, a maze of towering arcologies and twisting streets lit by perpetual neon. It was a perfect place to disappear or to find someone who didn't want to be found. Naira adjusted her holomask as they walked through the crowded market district. The device altered her features just enough to fool facial recognition systems, though the constant static tingle against her skin was annoying. Beside her, Raven wore a high-collared coat to hide his quantum patterns, which had grown stronger during their journey. "The coordinates Jin gave us lead to the medical district," she murmured, checking her encrypted datapad. "Rhodes works at a private clinic specializing in neural integration therapy." "A cover," Raven said, his modified voice deeper than usual. "I can sense quantum tech in that direction, similar resonance to what they used on me." They'd stolen 3 different ships to reach New Damascus, changing identities at each stop. Quantum Horizons hunters had nearly caught them twice. Only Raven's growing control over his abilities had saved them, though each use left him drained and shaking. The clinic occupied the lower floors of a modest arcology, its windows tinted against the eternal dusk. A holographic sign advertised progressive neural solutions in multiple languages. Armed guards watched the entrance with professional disinterest. Service entrance, Naira decided, leading them down a side alley. Less security, more. "Don't move." The voice was quiet but firm. A woman stepped from the shadows, her dark skin marked with subtle cybernetic enhancements. Her eyes were completely black, advanced optical implants. "You're earlier than I expected." "Dr. Rhodes," Naira's hand stayed near her concealed pistol. "Jin sent a warning ahead." Rhodes gestured to a hidden door. "Quickly, your pursuers aren't far behind." The door led to a sterile white corridor. Rhodes guided them through a maze of medical equipment and sleeping patients to a secure lab. Quantum computers hummed along the walls, their displays showing complex neural patterns. "You've learned to control it," Rhodes said to Raven, studying his concealed patterns. "Remarkable, the other subjects never achieved that level of integration." "You worked for them," Raven's voice was cold. "You helped create me." "I helped design the quantum integration process," Rhodes admitted, "but I never approved its weaponization. When they started pushing for military applications, I left, took as much data as I could." "And now you help people with neural disabilities," Naira noted, seeing the patient files. "Legitimate work." "Redemption, perhaps." Rhodes activated a secure terminal. "But Quantum Horizons hasn't stopped. They're attempting to force integration on unwilling subjects. The success rate is minimal." Raven's patterns flared beneath his coat. "How many?" 17 attempts since you escaped. 2 survivors, both unstable. They're trying to replicate your neural architecture, but without understanding why you succeeded." "I volunteered," Raven said softly. "I wanted to help people, to bridge the gap between human consciousness and quantum systems." "Exactly." Rhodes pulled up complex neural scans. "The integration requires acceptance, adaptation. It can't be forced, but the corporation wants weapons, not understanding. They're trying to create controllable quantum-enhanced soldiers." An alarm chimed on Rhodes' terminal. She checked it and cursed. "Security breach in the outer perimeter. They've found us." "How?" Naira demanded. "We were careful." "They're tracking quantum signatures now. His patterns are like a beacon to their new sensors." Rhodes began rapidly downloading files. "Take this data. It proves what they're doing, and it might help stabilize his integration permanently." "What about you?" "I have contingencies." Rhodes pressed a data crystal into Naira's hand. "Lower levels connect to maintenance tunnels, but you'll have to get past their perimeter teams." Raven stepped forward, patterns brightening. "I can help with that." Wait, Rhodes grabbed his arm. There's something else, something they discovered in the failed attempts. The quantum integration has a resonance effect. Under certain conditions, integrated subjects can share consciousness, connect directly through quantum fields. You mean there are others like me out there, connected? The two survivors, they're being held at the Quantum Horizons research facility on Erebus. If you could reach them, free them. Rhodes was cut off by another alarm. Go, I'll wipe the systems here. They ran. The maintenance tunnels were dark and narrow, but Raven's patterns provided enough light to navigate by. Behind them, they heard the sounds of breach charges and shouting. Multiple teams converging, Raven reported, his quantum senses extending. They have some kind of damping technology, trying to suppress my abilities. Then we'll have to be clever. Naira checked the tunnel map. Maintenance connects to the city's power grid. Think you can overload it carefully. Raven smiled slightly. I'm getting better at careful. He placed his hands on a junction box. Instead of the wild surge that had disabled the station, this was controlled, precise. Power flickered throughout the sector, automated systems crashed, and security barriers cycled randomly. They emerged into chaos. Emergency vehicles crowded the streets as buildings went dark. Guards ran to protect critical infrastructure, leaving gaps in their perimeter. Naira and Raven slipped through the confusion, making their way to the spaceport. The survivors, Raven said as they approached the ship they'd prepared for emergency escape. We have to help them. Erebus is a fortress world, high security, constant patrols. Naira began pre-flight checks, but if they're connected to you somehow. I can feel them faintly, like echoes in quantum space. His patterns shifted restlessly. They're in pain, afraid, the forced integration is tearing them apart. Naira thought of the Nightshade, sacrificed to protect Raven. Of Jin probably lying low after helping them. Of Rhodes facing Quantum Horizons interrogators. Everyone who'd risked everything to stop this. Then we'll find a way in, she said firmly. But first we need allies, resources, a plan that doesn't get us all killed. The ship lifted off as sector power restored. No pursuit yet, Rhodes' diversion had worked, but Quantum Horizons would track them eventually. They always did. Raven sat in the co-pilot seat, studying the data crystal. There's something else in Rhodes' files. Research notes about quantum consciousness, theories about collective intelligence emerging from connected minds. Is that what they're really after, some kind of hive mind? No, Raven's patterns pulsed thoughtfully. They want soldiers, weapons, but they don't understand what they're dealing with. Quantum consciousness isn't about control, it's about connection, understanding. Naira programmed a series of random jumps to throw off pursuit. Then we'll help them understand, right after we shut them down. They broke atmosphere as New Damascus' eternal twilight faded behind them. Somewhere out there, two tortured survivors reached for Raven across quantum fields. And on Erebus, Quantum Horizons scientists continued their ruthless experiments. But something was changing. In helping Raven control his abilities, in connecting with others like him, they were discovering new possibilities. Not weapons or tools, but a new way of being, of understanding. First, though, they had to survive. And that meant gathering allies, planning their assault on Erebus, and staying one step ahead of their pursuers. The hunt was far from over, but now they had purpose beyond mere survival. They had truth, connection, and a chance to stop the experiments once and for all. The stars beckoned as they made their first jump. Somewhere ahead lay Erebus, its secrets, and a confrontation that would change everything. The rebel base on Harmony's edge wasn't much to look at, a collection of retrofitted mining facilities buried in an asteroid belt. But to Naira and Raven, after 3 months of running, it felt like hope. Commander Jasper Nash, leader of the resistance against corporate exploitation in the outer systems, studied Rhodes' data with a grim expression. The veteran soldier's cybernetic I-word as it processed information. Human experimentation, forced quantum integration, weapons development. Nash shook his head. We've suspected Quantum Horizons of atrocities, but this. The survivors on Erebus won't last much longer, Raven said. His patterns had evolved, now flowing like liquid starlight beneath his skin. The forced integration is destroying their minds. And you can feel them through this quantum connection. Their pain, their fear. Raven closed his eyes, but also their strength, they're fighting back in their own way. Nash turned to Naira. Your reputation precedes you, Blackwood, best salvage pilot in the Outer Rim. and now you're planning to break into the most secure corporate facility in 3 sectors. Not alone, Naira replied. We need your help, ship's personnel, equipment. To rescue 2 people. To expose everything, Naira activated a holoprojector showing Rhodes' complete data. The failed experiments, the deaths, the illegal research. With this evidence, we can bring them down, but only if we can get in and out alive. Nash was quiet for a long moment. Then he smiled slightly. Jin said you'd say something like that. She's here, by the way, arrived yesterday with a ship full of acquired military gear. Relief flooded through Naira. She made it out. Quantum Horizons trashed her workshop, but she was long gone, been recruiting others who hate the corporation. You've got quite a crew waiting. He led them to a larger chamber where a dozen people worked on equipment and studied tactical displays. Jin was there, arguing with a tall woman about power distribution. Others included former corporate security, escaped test subjects, and independent operators with grudges against Quantum Horizons. Your team, Nash said, if you want them. Over the next week they planned their assault. Erebus was a fortress, but every fortress had weaknesses. Jin's contacts provided security protocols. Nash's rebels had detailed scans of the facility, and Raven's growing connection to the survivors gave them real-time intelligence. The quantum damping field covers the whole facility, technical specialist Zara Wang explained during a briefing. But it's coordinated through a central hub. Take that out. And I can reach the survivors directly, Raven finished. Help them stabilize their integration. The trick is getting inside. Naira studied the facility schematics. Security includes automated turrets, patrol drones, and elite corporate troops, plus whatever experimental weapons they're developing. That's where we come in, Nash gestured to his tactical team. Direct assault on the main gate, draw their forces out while your infiltration team slips in through maintenance tunnels. They'll be expecting something like that, Jin warned. Erebus filled the view screen, a dark world wrapped in artificial storms. Defense platforms tracked their approach as Nash's fleet engaged the orbital forces. Explosions lit the atmosphere like artificial stars. Ready? Naira asked, hands steady on the controls. Raven nodded, his patterns brightening, connected to ship systems, quantum signature masked. They dropped through the chaos of battle, their ship virtually invisible to sensors. Rebel forces drew fire from orbital platforms while Jin's team began their diversionary assault on the main gate. Everything going according to plan. Until it wasn't. Energy spike, Raven's warning came just as their ship shuddered violently. New type of quantum detection grid, they're tracking our descent. Anti-aircraft fire filled the sky. Naira rolled their ship through impossible angles, trusting Raven's quantum-enhanced reflexes to keep them intact. They hit the roof hard, skidding across landing pads as defensive turrets tracked their movement. So much for the subtle approach, Naira muttered, grabbing her gear. Plan B. The survivors, Raven's eyes were distant, connecting across quantum fields. They're helping, disrupting internal security, but something's wrong. Their patterns are destabilizing faster than before. They fought their way down through maintenance levels, using Raven's abilities to short out security systems and Jin's modified weapons to handle corporate troops. The facility was a maze of laboratories and holding cells, many showing signs of horrific experiments. The central hub is 2 levels down, Raven said as they caught their breath in a service corridor. Heavy security, and, he frowned, someone important, a mind trained against quantum sensing. Corporate leadership, Naira checked her weapon charge. No, a scientist, the one who designed the original integration process. They found out who it was moments later when they breached the central hub. Dr. Harrison Vale stood calmly among banks of quantum computers, his cybernetic implants glowing softly. Behind him, 2 figures writhed in containment tanks, their skin traced with chaotic, painful-looking patterns. The prodigal success returns, Vale smiled thinly. With help I see, how disappointing. You tortured them, Raven's voice shook with rage. Forced the integration, why? To perfect it, to control it. Vale gestured to the tanks. Your voluntary integration was a fluke, unreliable. We needed to understand how to direct the process to create predictable results. By destroying minds, breaking souls. By advancing human evolution, Vale's calm cracked slightly. Do you think quantum consciousness should develop randomly, without guidance? the power to connect minds to transcend physical limitations. It must be controlled. You're afraid, Naira realized. Afraid of what humans might become if they integrate naturally. I'm trying to save our species from chaos. No, Raven stepped forward, patterns blazing. You're trying to cage infinity. His consciousness reached out, connecting with the survivors. Their patterns synchronized, forming complex geometric shapes in quantum space. Vale stumbled back as every piece of technology in the room responded to their combined will. Impossible, he whispered, the dampening field. Can't stop natural evolution, Raven said, his voice overlapping with the survivors. Can't cage consciousness. The containment tanks shattered. The survivors, a young woman and an older man, stood unsteadily, their patterns stabilizing as they joined their quantum consciousness with Raven's. Information flowed between them, memories, pain, understanding. Security teams converging, Naira warned, watching facility feeds. We need to move. Vale lunged for a control panel, but quantum energy wrapped around him like chains. The survivors spoke in unison with Raven, no more cages, no more control. They made their way up through the facility as chaos erupted. Jin's team had breached the main gate, while Nash's forces landed troops on multiple levels. But the real damage came from within, as three quantum-integrated minds worked in harmony to unravel Quantum Horizon's carefully constructed systems. Security robots turned on their masters, doors sealed randomly. Computer systems broadcasted evidence of illegal experiments to every major news network in known space. The corporation's carefully guarded secrets laid bare for all to see. They reached the roof as the facility began to tear itself apart. Jin was waiting with an extraction ship, covering their escape with surprising accuracy. As they lifted off, Raven and the survivors maintained their connection, ensuring no pursuit could follow. The quantum integration, Naira asked once they were safely away, can it be stabilized? It already is, Raven smiled. Natural integration formed through trust and choice, the way it was meant to be. He turned to the survivors Marcus Chen and Samira Patel, who nodded in agreement. Their patterns now flowed smoothly, naturally, like stars wheeling in formation. And Vale. Arrested along with most of the facility leadership, the evidence is overwhelming. Jin's voice held satisfaction. Quantum Horizons won't survive this. Too many investigations, too many angry shareholders. But there will be others, Marcus spoke for the first time, his voice rough from disuse. Other corporations, other attempts to control evolution. Then we'll stop them too, Samira said firmly. Show them a better way. Naira watched as the three quantum-integrated humans shared silent communication, their patterns dancing like auroras. She thought of her lost ship, of the risks and sacrifices that had brought them here. Worth it to see consciousness evolving freely, naturally, finding its own path to the stars. So, she said finally, what comes next? Raven smiled, his patterns reflecting starlight. Evolution, connection, understanding, everything they feared but as a gift, not a weapon. The ship carried them away from Erebus towards an uncertain but hopeful future. Behind them, Quantum Horizon's fortress burned, its secrets exposed, its power broken. And in quantum space, three minds touched countless others, showing them possibilities they'd never imagined. The war was over, the evolution was just beginning. Together, they flew into the infinite dark, carrying Starlight's promise of a new dawn for human consciousness. Not controlled, not caged, but free to become whatever it was meant to be.